round of introductions. I'll introduce myself and the team over here. And then what we'll do is we'll go around and allow everyone from the CAC committee to introduce themselves as well. Again, for those of you that may have joined shortly after we started, my name's Corey Pitts. I'm the planning section manager in our Division of Transportation Engineering for MCDOT. I did manage the last phase, the planning phase of the Maryland 355 project, as well as the design of the US 29 BRT. And then I've also got a number of other staff with me here tonight as well. Darcy Buckley, would you like to say hi?
Hi, I'm Darcy Buckley I'm in the director's office with MCDOT. Happy to be back here again.
Joanna Conklin.
Hi everyone, it's Joanna Conklin. I'm the Bus Rapid Transit Program Manager for the county. Nice to see you all tonight.
We've got a familiar face, but in a new role. So many of you who were with us during the planning phase of the project probably recognize Denny Fennerin. She was part of the consultant team that led the planning study during the last phase of work. She still is with the consulting firm Gannett Fleming, but we have brought her on to function as kind of the day-to-day project manager for this project. So I'm going to turn it over to her and she's going to introduce the rest of the team and take things over from here.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this lovely evening. As Corey said, I am helping out the county in the project management role of this project. And I'd like to go ahead and go through some of the design team members, if they can say hi real quickly. First, we have Mike Chamberlain.
Evening, everyone.
Lori Adgate, both of them are from Stantec.
Good evening.
And also Randy Napick.
Hello.
And Andrew Peace from IBI Group.
Hi, everyone.
And real quick, maybe we can ask the CAC members to go through and introduce themselves and who they represent. Let me pull up a list of participants. Who have I got here? Oh, we also do have Nick Hart from IBI. He's also here as well. So let's go ahead and start through the list. Barbara Condos.
Hi, Barbara Condos, and I'm at large.
We have Jan White.
Hi, I'm Jan White, and I represent the Bethesda Chevy Chase area.
Dave Sears.
Hi, Dave Sears. I represent Sierra Club.
Barbara Condos. Oh wait, I already did her, I'm sorry. It's moving, the numbers are moving. Deborah Berger.
Hi, I'm Deborah Berger. I'm representing LCA in Lux Manor. Thank you.
Joe Harrison.
Hi, I'm Joe Harrison. I'm with MDOT State Highway Administration. I'm here just as an interested observer. I appreciate you accommodating me. Thank you.
Juan Castro.
Hello, this is Juan. I am transportation planner from the Countywide Planning and Policy Division, representing Montgomery Planning.
And we have Mustas. Is what?
Hi, that's me, AKA Nancy Abelus. Never let your child set up your computer. I am with the Bethesda Crest HOA, but I'm also sort of at large because I've been with this project since listening in to the task force and actually being in a group of people who met with Mr. Leggett, the former county executive, to create and ensure that there were going to be CACs for all of these routes. So hello to everybody. It's nice to see all of the same team again. Thank you.
And I think Susan Roberts is the last one.
Yes, this is Susan Roberts. I represent NIH.
All right. Did I miss everybody? Oh, and that's right, Peter. That's right, Peter Benjamin.
And I'm Peter, and I'm the former mayor of the town of Garrett Park.
Okay, great. Yeah, he popped in the middle there. Okay, so if I missed anybody else, please let me know. All right, well, let's move on to the agenda. So we are going to give you all a little Maryland 355 project refresher. Most of you are old hats at this project, but it's been a little while since we've gathered. So we'll give you a little brief refresher, and then we'll do a project update on where we are and what we've been working on in the past year, and a schedule for where we're going moving forward. And then we'll dig into a presentation and focused discussion on what actually has been happening. And then we'll talk about some next steps. Go ahead, Randy. All right, so the meeting objectives. We are here to update you all on the status of the Maryland 355 BRT project as it moves forward into preliminary engineering. And we're going to talk to you all about design refinements that are being considered as part of preliminary engineering. And we're going to provide you all with an opportunity to ask questions about where we're going and provide feedback on what we present tonight. Next slide.
There we go.
All right, so we've talked about this before. The purpose of the project is to provide a new transit service with greater travel speed and frequency along Maryland 355 between Bethesda and Clarksburg that will help accomplish the following list of items on your right. I'm not going to read through them all. I think Corey said in a previous meeting that we're trying to save the world with this purpose and need, but we are trying to accomplish a lot. You know, connectivity, mobility, increased ridership, improved safety. So moving forward, Randy. A little bit about the Flash BRT program. The 355 BRT is a part of the greater county's vision for over 100 miles of Flash BRT service in 11 corridors countywide. As you all probably know, the US 29 Flash BRT began operations in October, on October 14th, 2020. If you haven't been out there seeing the buses going up and down 29, you should take a peek, take a ride. They do look great out there. Next slide. So you guys have seen this map many times. This is the corridor. It extends 22 miles from Bethesda to Clarksburg. It contains a diversity of travel needs, trip purposes, and land use. We are urban down in Bethesda, and we go all the way to almost rural and ex-urban up in Clarksburg. Next slide. And here's another old figure for you, but it is one that we will continue to use as we go forward because it is so handy and it continues to be valid for our work. The project design segments, we are continuing to use these project design segments, breaking them down into 7, starting in the southern end and Bethesda with segment 1 and going up to segment 7 in Clarksburg. The preliminary engineering for this project is focusing on segments 2 through 6. And the reason we're doing this is because these are the segments which include the dedicated lane section, the most infrastructure requirements, the more challenging sections of the project, whereas segments 1 and 7 are operating in mixed traffic. However, BRT service could run beyond the limits of the dedicated infrastructure once construction is complete. Next slide. So the phase 2 planning outcome, we heard a majority of support for alternative B modified, including from the County Council Transportation and Engineering Committee. But there were some questions that we didn't ask, and we didn't ask the county to move forward with a locally preferred alternative. We solicited some additional feedback from stakeholders, such as the city of Rockville and Gaithersburg. And consequently, our design ideas have evolved in a few locations and will be fleshed out as a part of preliminary engineering. And that's some of the detailed stuff that Randy is going to get into in a few more slides. One of the things I do want to mention is up in segment 7, up in Clarksburg and Germantown, our selected route was along Snowden Farm Parkway. And the reason we selected that location was because the bulk of The development has occurred over in that location. The other two options we had were along Maryland 355 or along Observation Drive. And as a lot of you know, all of Observation Drive has not yet been completed, and there are no plans for the construction of that roadway to date. And Maryland 355 up in the northern end does go down to a 2-lane, much more rural seeming road. So going over on Snowden Parkway, not Snowden Parkway, I'm sorry, made more sense. Next slide, Randy. All right, so project update and schedule. Snowden Farm Parkway. So as I mentioned previously, the Maryland 355 BRT is entering preliminary engineering. So that is detailed design, and it will include the completion of 35% design plans, a construction schedule, and a more detailed construction cost estimate. As I mentioned, alternative B modified is the basis of design, with refinements being explored to enhance performance and reduce costs and impacts. In addition, the federal and state environmental NEPA process, which is the National Environmental Policy Act process, will occur in parallel with this design process. Next slide. So we are here. In the blue box to the left, planning and conceptual engineering, is when we met last time. That was when we looked at all of the alternatives. We did traffic modeling, we developed the purpose and need, and we identified preliminary impacts. Now we're moving forward into more detailed preliminary engineering, where we are going to look at performance and design refinements for the BRT. We conducted surveys, we're getting right-of-way plats, doing more detailed traffic studies and more detailed environmental assessments, and the schedule and cost estimate. And then what will happen next will be final design and then ultimately construction. And those two are not funded yet. Next slide. And here is a project timeline, which we have shown in the past, but now we've extended it out further to show where we are. The planning phase, which is shown here as phase 2, went on from 2017 to 2019. And now we are in the preliminary engineering phase, which is occurring now in 2020 and to be complete in 2022. Next slide, Randy. So here are some of our milestones. A 15% role plan submission with the design refinements will be submitted this summer in 2021, and the adoption of a locally preferred alternative will occur in summer or fall of 2021. 25% design plans will be submitted in winter or spring 2022. And then 35% preliminary plans, schedule, and cost estimate will be completed in fall of 2022. And then the submission of those 35% plans for mandatory referral from Park and Planning after county approval will occur in the fall or winter of 2022. And the public review of the environmental documentation, which will likely be either a categorical exclusion or an environmental assessment, will occur in fall or winter of 2022. Next slide. All right, so Randy's going to pick up from here for a little while and talk about some of the focused engineering efforts that have been going on.
Okay, thanks, Denny. Good evening to everyone. Really great to be with you here tonight, talk about the project. I'm going to highlight a few things that represent the recent and ongoing work from the design team as we move into a more detailed understanding of the overall project concept and the infrastructure engineering. Talk about three main areas. I'll start with the overall bus rapid transit service plan and some of the refinements that are being considered at this time. I'll talk about some of the refinements to the running way design in a couple of the segments, and then kind of what we're looking at overall in the corridor. And then lastly, I want to touch on some areas where we're looking at refinements to the alignment, the routing, and station locations in 3 kind of critical areas of the project. Those are Shady Grove, Montgomery College, Rockville, and the Lake Forest Mall area. So invite you to ask questions anytime. I've got the Brady Bunch screen of camera views here at the bottom. I'll keep an eye out for hands raised, and Corey will be keeping an eye on the chat box. And we'll try to take a break between each of these segment areas to invite questions or discussions. All right, well, let's start with the service planning refinement. So, overall as the design team, we're looking at how we can enhance the speed and reliability of the BRT service through this sometimes congested and always busy urban corridor that has a lot of very interesting, complex operating characteristics with the traffic signals, traffic volumes, transit operations, et cetera, going on. We've also been looking at the service patterns of the BRT, so where the lines go and how the lines are structured. We have a 22-mile long corridor. As Danny said, it changes character quite a bit. If you look into some of the data of why people would use the system and why they would choose the BRT over other modes operating in the corridor, whether it's local bus or metro rail, we're really trying to focus in on where BRT adds value to that overall system of transit operating in the corridor, and that's led to some thinking about how we can make that as effective as possible. And then, the service planning refinements are really intended to inform the preliminary engineering design. So as we're understanding the structure of the routes better, we can plan for termini and transit center locations. We can plan for the types of infrastructure treatments that are needed, some of the treatments and intersections, et cetera, which feeds directly into the 15% rule plan development and beyond. Another issue we're looking at the service plan level as we go through preliminary engineering is the shared segment of 355 that starts from a Rockville Metro Station area north to Montgomery College, Rockville. And this is where the 355 BRT project and the proposed Fierce Mill BRT project intersect, and will share a section of running way from Rockville north to the college. So you can see here on the map with the little inset area, the Veers Mill project is coming in from the east. It originates over at Wheaton. And when it joins Rockville, there'll be a shared BRT station for both 355 and Veers Mill BRTs at Rockville. And then the Veers Mill project will terminate at Montgomery College, Rockville. So the 355 engineering team is taking the lead on the planning and design of infrastructure for both of these projects and how they need to interact. So we'll talk a little bit about the terminus area at the college when we get to that segment of the presentation. Okay, well, we're going through all the familiar diagrams. You may recognize the diagram off to the left, service patterns. This was the proposed service plan coming out of the phase 2 planning for the 355 project. You see there are 3 colors, the goldish color, the navy, and the green. Again, representing the fact that over the course of the 22-mile corridor, there are several different service needs and there are different routes structured to accommodate those needs. It's actually 4 patterns. So the gold route at the top has 2 patterns really emerging from Montgomery College, Rockville area. One goes north to Clarksburg, the other goes to the Germantown Transit Center. The navy route serves the heart of the alignment, going from Lake Forest Mall area, the Lake Forest Transit Center down to Grosvenor Metro. And then in the south, we have the green alignment that is serving to the Bethesda area from Montgomery College, Rockville. So we've been looking at these patterns and thinking about some potential refinements based on estimated ridership and some of the performance of the proposed route structures from the planning phase. And we're coming up with a slightly more streamlined pattern shown here on the left in a new graphic. It still consists of 4 patterns. We're still kind of using the same color coding here. Again, starting in the north with the gold line, we have both of these patterns starting at Shady Grove and heading north to Clarksburg and to another terminus in the Milestone area. The real market for this route, if you will, is the extensive commuter attraction to Shady Grove from points to the north, and trying to provide an attractive service for a large proportion of passengers who would terminate trips at Shady Grove coming from points Clarksburg, Germantown area. You'll notice here that we've got the mid route terminus at the Milestone area. We're currently looking at alternatives to exactly where to terminate this route. But the idea is that because of just the passenger volumes and the increased urbanization towards the southern portion of this route, we would have more service traveling between Milestone and Shady Grove, and then relatively fewer trips would go all the way out to Clarksburg and the Outlet Mall terminus. So instead of branching over to the Germantown area, we're having kind of these two patterns terminating at Clarksburg and Milestone area. On the Navy route, we have, again, a terminus at the Lake Forest Transit Center. We'll talk a bit more in detail about the vision for the Lake Forest area. This route would go south to the Grosvenor or White Flint area based on some considerations of what would make the best terminus logistically on the south end. But again, serving the heart of the corridor, folks traveling really within destinations within the corridor and less focused on the longer distance commuter travelers. And then lastly, we have the green route still really as proposed before from Montgomery College and Rockville to Bethesda. For most of its length, it's really paralleling the WMATA Red Line, but it's serving really a combination of folks who are traveling just within this zone, so more local trips than would use the Metro Rail. It's also serving as an important feeder for the Metro Rail service. Given the wide spacing of Metro Rail stations in this area, the BRT could take passengers to and from the nearest Metro Rail if they're traveling further into the DC area. You'll note here we're proposing to drop the pattern going to the Germantown Transit Center, really truncating that in the Milestone area instead. This is because, based on further analysis of what was proposed in phase 2, it was the lowest performing route in terms of passengers carried and some other metrics of passengers per mile and cost per passenger to provide that service. So we think that can be better served by other local routes and the numerous other connections to the Germantown Transit Center area. I'll just take a breath here, see if there are any immediate questions or comments on the service plan before I move on. I see one from a hand from Dave Sears.
Thank you. On the last little bit, you talked about how you're handling Germantown, and also there was a mention, I don't know, about 10 minutes ago about three different routes in that northern section. One was Snowden Parkway and two others. But my question is, we can't 100% predict the future in terms of, where people are going to live, where they're going to want to work, where they're going to want to ride, et cetera. There's hundreds of things that we absolutely can't predict. But we can build the system in such a way that if it would be better to do things a little differently, that we have the flexibility built in, or at least we've considered providing flexibility for the future so that it's easier rather than more difficult to provide a change 15, 20 years down the road. So, no pun intended. So could you speak to that, please?
Sure. Couple of things there. We'll get some echo. Thanks, Dave, for muting. A couple ideas there. So first, no particular order, the three routes options that Denny showed in the Clarksburg area, Snowden Farms, 355 and Observation. So I think, in that area, we're just proposing to serve the one to be the Snowden Farms route as we head north to Clarksburg. One thing I'll point out here is, north of Gunners Branch Road, it's a little subtle on this diagram, but since we're talking about it, this is the approximate end of the proposed fixed infrastructure. So as we go north into segment 7, we're operating more in a a mixed traffic scenario with stations intermittently placed along the roadway. So in that sense, the kind of the flexibility to explore routes off of the alignment is maybe a little higher than where we have the kind of core infrastructure where it's much more built with fixed running way. I would observe nothing in this the service plan or the overall project concept would preclude addition of service to Germantown Transit Center in the future. Though also in the context of this project, there are a number of things going on, particularly as you get towards the upper and mid-county areas. One of those is proposed overall restructuring planning for the ride-on bus service that the county is looking at undertaking over the next couple of years. May lead to some other service changes that this project will fit into. So there's some other opportunities there to explore service to the Germantown area and others. Also, we're running parallel to the I-270 express lanes corridor, which is another area where there's a ongoing discussion about transit and the role of express transit services in the north. And one thing we've looked at, again, going back to why people would use the system and some of the travel patterns, it's pretty clear that as you go further towards the north, kind of north into Germantown and then certainly north into Clarksburg, the more express type services that could be provided to some of the key destination points like Shady Grove or Bethesda or other places, they tend to become more attractive than taking a bus rapid transit for a long distance down the whole corridor. So, kind of the niche where BRT is fitting in is serving some of the trips that are a little shorter in length, and also, serving as a feeder to some of the other transit connection points, particularly Shady Grove. So kind of long answer to try to touch on some of the issues you raised, but I think, one of the attributes of bus rapid transit is its flexibility. There is a capability and experience in other places to adjust routes and adjust route patterns and even some of the termination locations off route based on how demand does materialize, how the county grows over time, and maybe what some of the stickier changes are with COVID travel patterns and how 5-day-a-week commuting might change over time. I see a hand from Deborah Berger.
Hello, thank you. What are the traffic implications on both Old Georgetown Road and Tuckerman? There are now 2 failed intersections, both at Tuckerman and Old Georgetown Road, as well as in Tilden. And with the new Henson Museum that will be coming, that'll be an additional issue. Then the new Woodward High School, they did say that the buses, and I'm on that committee as well, that the buses will be lining up on Old Georgetown Road. These will all impact these roads. And we're concerned as the LCA right now in our community that people will be avoiding Rockville Pike, and it will negatively adverse the side roads. And they'll already completely, it's overcrowded on Old Georgetown and Tuckerman between Henson House and when New Woodward comes, Tilden Middle School that just moved, and Lux Manor. We have a lot of traffic overflow, and when people are dodging Rockville Pike, how is this going to impact, especially when the county has already deemed the 2 failed intersections at Old Georgetown and Tuckerman and Tilden? How are you guys going to handle this situation?
I don't know, Corey, if you want to say anything for the more general context of county traffic or planning, or do you want me to talk about it from the project perspective?
Sure,
first?
I can give kind of a general response, and then you can touch on how the project is addressing traffic. So, I mean, the county reviews all of the development proposals and, changes to public schools and other developments that come online, and those are considered by our traffic group as they're considering things. So everything's being looked at in context, and we're constantly, adapting and tweaking the system to try and optimize it to improve performance as best we can within the system that we have. I think transitioning to higher quality transit, like we're trying to do with Bus Rapid Transit, is in a move to try and shift more folks to view transit as an option for traveling up and down the corridor. And if we're successful in that, I think it affords us an opportunity to perhaps remove some cars that maybe are, currently traveling the corridor. I think the transit study that Randy mentioned, the network redesign, is going to look at, where does it make the most sense to put transit service and put high quality transit service. Maybe it's not bus rapid transit, but maybe it's limited stop or other types of services. These can help with traffic on roads like Old Georgetown and other areas of the county that are currently experiencing congestion. So I think it's part of a larger picture that we're always looking at, and there's no one single project that's going to solve all of the problems, but kind of a concerted effort from all of the groups and all of the efforts that are underway to try and resolve traffic. And then I guess as it relates to this project, I'll let Randy touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So, as far as BRT service, as I mentioned at the outset of the service plan discussion, we're really interested in looking at every strategy we have in the toolkit to improve the speed and reliability of bus rapid transit service, while also improving or maintaining the performance of the intersections we're passing through. So there's maybe two main sets of strategies that the team's currently looking at. One is, of course, we could physically widen the road or add capacity in terms of travel lanes. The second is looking at technologies related to traffic signal operation and transit signal priority to help move the BRT vehicles through the corridor. So one thing we're doing as we're going kind of further into design is we're trying to look a bit more granularly, a little bit more critically at some of the design alternatives and options at kind of an intersection by intersection, road segment by road segment basis. And we're looking at alternative designs and trying to use traffic analysis and traffic microsimulation to really understand what movements would be like in that area, and using that as an iterative way to try to really optimize the performance of the corridor. So that's work ongoing. I'll get into a little bit of that as we go through the running rate refinement.
Right. So not just, right, I was going to say, so not just on the Rockville Pike, because this will be an overflow to our community with the LCA. This will be an overflow. It'll be pretty factual. It will go into Old Georgetown and Tuckerman, which again, according to the county, there's two failed, already deemed intersections that are failed. So when we already have issues already, we're just concerned how it will impact our community already, when it could take 15 minutes to get through a traffic light. And when people are gonna dodge Rockville Pike, we just really want you to take note of that whole area, take note of Old Georgetown and Tuckerman, take note of how it will impact the side roads as well, not just how the BRT will go up and down Rockville Pike, but how it will impact the side roads as well.
Okay, yeah, thank you for sharing. We've got a kind of a working group
much.
within the team. We look at operations and traffic and design, so I'll make sure the message is communicated. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Mustis.
Hi, Nancy.
Nancy.
Yeah, actually, in Deborah's same area, I understand her concern because they're also building out the grid there as Pike and Rose develops. There's a project going on right now, a cut through to Executive Boulevard. So there, I would imagine there's going to be a lot more traffic circulation around there in general. But it so happens that for totally unrelated purposes, I was looking at the Transportation Planning Board's Visualized 2045 constrained projects list for public comment. And I see that the North Bethesda Transitway is still on the list there. And that's in that same area too. So I'm all confused as to what's supposed to be happening. Is that project still on, and where was that supposed to go?
So the North Bethesda Transitway project is currently scheduled to start planning in 2 years. We have money that's in the larger program budget, so that would be fiscal year 24. So the planning for that corridor project would occur starting in fiscal year 24. And that would start kind of the planning and if funding is continually applied to that project, moving into design and then ultimately construction. The master plan does identify 2 potential corridors for the North Bethesda Transitway. One would take it from Rock Creek, or I'm sorry, from Rock Spring over to Grosvenor. The other would carry it up to White Flint. The planning study will settle, which of those corridors makes the most sense from kind of a travel patterns and destinations and activity center connectivity standpoint. So at this stage, and that's why it's in that 2045 plan, is that's a long range plan. And because we are anticipating starting planning on that project, we see a future for that project moving forward. So that's why you see it listed in the COG CLRP.
Thank you, Corey.
Sure. Okay, Peter.
Randy, on the map that's shown there, I assume that the little dots on the yellow, blue, and green are the BRT stations. Is that correct?
It's not all of the stations. They're really just the interface points. So you can see, for example, we've got the Metro Rail red line shown here. So the only dots on the BRT lines are at the station. So there are stations in between. They're more than are shown here on this diagram.
Have a current map of where you believe those stations will be?
Not at my fingertips, but we do have sort of working assumptions for where all the stations are, and kind of evolving from dotted a map to where they would actually fit within the streets and the intersections at those locations.
Would it be possible for you to send me a copy of that?
Peter, that's all on the project website right now.
Okay.
Is there a link to that or something, Danny, we could put in the chat, or we could send it to Peter directly?
I'll load it up and find it.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, thank you. Okay, well, Nancy, okay, you got your hands up. Okay, thanks. I'm seeing no hands. I'll go on to topic area number 2. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the BRT runway refinement. So again, from a design team perspective, we're looking to take the roadway treatments that have been developed through the planning phase 2 and see if there are ways we can refine and optimize those, again, in the interest of promoting a bus rapid transit system that has good speed, good reliability, that's going to make it useful and attract riders. The other thing we're looking at is, as you probably know, some of the segments within the 355 corridor that have proposed roadway treatments, roadway widenings associated with them that really create fairly significant right-of-way impacts and impacts on cost, both for improving the roadway and also acquiring land to complete the right-of-way to complete the roadway expansions. So again, we're trying to be strategic and look, really intersection by intersection, block by block through the corridor, and see if we can find ways to reduce some of those negative impacts on the projects and the communities. And then, as I mentioned a moment ago, we're looking at kind of technology strategies, design treatments, and really looking at intersection performance, both from the perspective of the BRT, but to the earlier comment, also looking at impacts on traffic performance. And really, our hope is that the design team, we can bring, what's considered good thinking about the BRT design challenges, good design solutions, and good information that will support the decision-making process about how the project evolves and how it moves forward. So I'm going to talk about 2 segments in particular, segment 3 and segment 5, where we're digging in right now to understand some alternatives. So first we'll talk about segment 3. So this is really the heart of Rockville, town center area. I've got the mini excerpt from the map that Danny showed you towards the beginning of the presentation that shows that in the alternative B modified proposal coming out of phase 2, this was proposed to have a single dedicated BRT lane running through the center of the roadway that would operate at all times in the southbound direction. What we're looking at now is seeing if there are ways we can use essentially the same width of real estate that this option would use, but provide additional benefits for travel in the northbound direction. So being a little more creative, kind of block by block, intersection by intersection, and the design team's working through what that alternative might look like at this time. The other thing we're needing to consider here is, as I mentioned several minutes ago, this is the segment where the 355 and the Versmill BRT projects start to come together. So it's a relatively high volume of vehicles. It's important from an operations and travel time perspective for both of the projects So we're trying to do it right with, while still having minimal impacts on the kind of constrained right-of-way through this segment. The other segment we're looking at very closely right now is segment 5. So this is up in the core of Gaithersburg, from Montgomery Village Avenue down to Summit. An alternative B modified, this was also a single lane, but the idea was that this would reverse by time of day, and basically the flow of the BRT lane would be in the direction of peak travel. There's been a number of comments from City of Gaithersburg looking, at basically asking, are there ways that we can reduce the impacts of this alternative on adjacent property owners, because this proposed alternative requires widening of the road right of way and impacts a number of the commercial residential properties through this corridor. So the City of Gaithersburg preference is to use more of a mixed traffic configuration, similar to what we have in the far north and the far south of the project. Of course, the flip side of that is making sure we can still get good speed and BRT performance through this segment. So the team's coming up with design alternatives that would take away the reversible single BRT lane in the middle and do something using more of a mixed traffic configuration with some more focused treatments to improve BRT speed and reliability. And then we'll see what we can come up with and how this performs both in traffic and BRT terms, as well as reduce impacts on the adjacent property owners, so that we can have the discussion about which alternative makes sense to move forward. Dave, I see your hand up again.
Thank you. Regarding segment 5, again, you on the staff, you know this better than I do. Worldwide, nationwide, effective BRT, and you keep talking about the frequency and the service and et cetera. The number one characteristic of a BRT that works, that will achieve those objectives, laudable objectives that you've mentioned several times, is it has to run in a dedicated lane. Otherwise, it's not going to be rapid. And if we're calling it bus rapid transit, it then becomes false advertising. So although, I understand these are tough decisions, and I understand that taking some property from some uses in Gaithersburg, I can understand, if I was a politician in Gaithersburg, I might be defending my small businesses along the route as well. But longer term, and thinking both longer term and thinking countywide, it seems to me that this is a really bad choice. Let's make a couple of Gaithersburg politicians unhappy. Let's make a couple of small business owners in Gaithersburg happy, but let's make the 11 route BRT network a success, and we need to run it in dedicated lanes, not mixed traffic.
Yeah, thanks for the comment. So what we're looking to do is we're analyzing this segment as well as segment 3 in Rockville, is try to understand and put on the table what the trade-offs would be in terms of impacts and performance for BRT, for traffic, for property owners, so that those things really can be compared. And if it is clear that one operates better in terms of BRT or traffic, we have some information and data to support what's kind of ultimately the values decision that the community and community electeds will make on which direction the project should go. One thing I agree, generally speaking, BRT dedicated running way is obviously good for performance of the system. It gets traffic out of the way, obviously. But in some segments where you have a high density of traffic signals along the route, the other thing that's important is how we can move the vehicles through the signalized intersection, so we don't have a really high travel speed through a dedicated lane, and then we're still stopped for a minute at an intersection. So what we're trying to do in conceptualizing something in Gaithersburg that would use mixed traffic is, is there a way we can really shave off some of that delay around the intersections? Can we use queue jumps or other roadway configurations near the intersections and still get a lot of the, it's called the value for the BRT that the single lane would provide, but maybe reduce some of the property impacts. So that's the art of what we're trying to do. And when we come forward in a few months' time and have some information, then the conversation can be had about what is the appropriate design decision for the community in these segments.
I'd just briefly say it doesn't necessarily have to be a choice. Running the traffic signals more effectively is not, that can be done in conjunction with dedicated lanes, or as you suggested, without the dedicated lanes. But why not do both?
Yeah, absolutely. They're complementary. So again, we're kind of looking at this and trying to see what is the best alternative we could do if we didn't have the dedicated running way, and we'll try to bring information to the table that supports that community conversation. Okay, so just to wrap up the running way, so corridor wide, again, in the spirit of kind of digging down into the details of the system, we're looking really from top to bottom of the alignment at opportunities to refine the engineering design. So some of the intersection treatments, the lane configuration at different intersections, the placement of stations and the proximity to the signalized intersections. Again, transit signal priority and traffic signal strategies, signal coordination strategies, trying to introduce some of the more innovative treatments that have been used in BRT corridors in very constrained environments. We're looking at station location with respect to both operational concerns as well as the access of passengers. We like to call the first last mile access. So, how convenient are the stations as proposed for people walking to and from destinations in the corridor? And can we improve on those? Can we improve safety, et cetera? In the number of stations where we have proximity or we're co-located inside a WMATA Metro Rail station, we've been having discussions about what their vision is and how we can improve the kind of the physical relationship of the BRT station with Metro Rail, make sure they're good, convenient, and safe connections. And then, looking at some of the BRT terminus locations, we'll talk about that a little bit here for some of the refinement areas along the corridor, but, understanding where we can terminate routes, layover vehicles, provide driver support facilities, load passengers at the endpoints, and so on. So these are all really active conversations going on from top to bottom in the corridor. So we head towards 15% and beyond. Okay, so just to kind of conclude, I alluded to this earlier in the question and answers, but we're trying to bring forward some design analysis and traffic operational analysis for the alternatives that are being developed at this time, and conducting detailed analysis of traffic operations, intersection performance, and the BRT alignment. And this will be information coming forward as we meet in the coming months to talk about what some of the opportunities and trade-offs here. And then we'll try to take the good ideas, move them forward, and incorporate them into the design. Others, maybe good to just have evaluated how they performed, or what the options may have been, and maybe some ideas we don't adopt. But we'll try to bring information to the table. David, is your hand up again?
Yes, thank you for giving us, and I assume it's just a thumbnail sketch of the conversation you had with officials in Gaithersburg. Could you give us a equally brief thumbnail sketch of the conversations you had with officials in Rockville?
Sure. I've had the least long-running conversation, so Corey may want to weigh in here. But I think generally the idea of taking the existing right-of-way width we have for the proposed one-lane BRT alternative and trying to be a bit more creative with it, trying to get benefit in both the north and southbound directions was something that was well received. We're looking to do that, providing it's in the Rockville Center area, a good station location that provides access not only to the Metro Rail station at Rockville, but also connections into the destinations on the other side of the 355 in the Rockville Town Center area. So, I don't know, Corey, do you want to give any more context to the longer arc of history?
I mean, So when we wrapped up the last phase of work and presented the alternatives, the Rockville City Council and Mayor were generally supportive of the alternative that we're using as the basis of design, alternative B modified, which showed the single lane running way through segment 3 and segment 4, which is also part of Rockville leading up to Shady Grove, and then the dual lane configuration headed south from downtown Rockville towards White Flint. So, you know, that's what we're continuing to carry forward. You know, I think as Randy noted, the one thing we are trying to see what we can do is whether we can actually make that segment 3 single lane configuration operate ideally in both directions, because the last phase of work had it operating in just one direction. So the team's looking at, you know, what kind of creative solutions and designs can we come up with to have it operate in a bi-directional fashion like the other single lane segments were proposed to do. So, you know, I will say generally Rockville's been supportive of the work that's moving forward at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Deborah's hand raised.
Yeah, so, and again, I appreciate you looking at the traffic with Old Georgetown and Tuckerman. That's really important to our community. And then you are there. I know that with the Pike and Rose, I think that we covered a little bit, but the Pike District, I know that there's some of these meetings with the Pike District, the connector community meetings. Are you working in conjunction with them? Because we have just so much going on here. As I said, with new schools, new this, new that, the Pike and the Rockville, the whole Montrose and Pike and Rose and everything else. Are you guys working in conjunction to verify what can be done to really help our community without impacting it?
So yes,
sure. Yeah.
I'll jump. I mean,
go ahead, Corey.
As part of the facility planning group, we see all the developments. We understand what's going on. I work with the design team that's working on the roadway improvements in White Flint. In fact, some of those designers on the consultant side are also the designers on this project. So there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of shared information that's going around. So yes, we are trying to take as large and holistic a picture of, you know, how this corridor relates, not just to the corridor itself, but to the surrounding neighborhoods and communities that frame the corridor on both sides.
Okay, thank you very much. As I said, for our community, that's very important. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I see Richard's hand.
Hi, and to Corey, sorry I was, oh dear. Sorry I was late, I couldn't make it until 7. But I think I'm sure I can get caught up on what happened before, but the running way refinement was the area of most interest. And Randy, just so you know, and as Corey well knows, me and Nancy Abeles are sort of the experts sort of inside the Beltway to Navy Medical, but more generally Grosvenor to Navy Medical. However, I have just wound up owning on behalf of my daughter an apartment, owning a condo in 1500 Rockville Pike, which is just right across from the Grosvenor Metro Station, and sort of volunteered to, you know, as an owner there to find out whether anything is going to be going on, you know, at that in your planning. There's a lot going to be happening there with high-rise apartments going up, I know, on the station and other things going on. I'm just wondering if you have focused any with WMATA on what the location of the stations will be on Rockville Pike, going into the station itself and all the facilities there, or a mix of in the station and on the Pike, and how that will all work at Grosvenor. Is that something you've looked at? And I guess Peter, not Peter, Randy, excuse me.
It is, you know, so in general, where we have a proposed station at a WMATA Metro Rail station, you know, WMATA's looking at a lot of their assets, looking at real estate and looking at joint development opportunities around those areas. Not all are, you know, kind of committed visions, but there's a lot of kind of interest in increasing development around stations. We've been trying to stay in touch with them to understand those. Looking at what would be the future of in some cases new street grids, new pedestrian connections to try to at least try to anticipate some of the changes that might happen in the future and how BRT can support that. I think, also in general, where there's new redevelopments of the White area, other places where there could be potential land use changes, to the extent we can, we're trying to be aware of, known redevelopment opportunities. I'll talk about Lake Forest here in a few minutes to understand, kind of the bigger picture of how BRT might fit into the community and how decisions such as stations placement might, kind of impact the long-term effectiveness of the system.
Yeah, I was thinking a little bit more narrowly in the sense of whether there'd be a right-of-way alignments, let's say at the corner of Tuckerman Lane and Rockville Pike. You could put everything there, you could widen it a bit. I mean, it's very constrained space by a sharp drop down on either side of the pike. And you could avoid that by running the buses potentially through the station, at least in the southbound direction, and then on Pike, the northbound. I don't know if you've gotten that far into your planning.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. One thing we are looking at is, shifting the station, generally that segment south of Tuckerman. There's advantages to going a little south if we could maybe access the pedestrian tunnel area. Yeah. There might be advantages going to the north along Tuckerman, but all of them have trade-offs. You mentioned the grade differences. Some of the sidewalks are a little narrower, some are more direct to the station, some are less direct. So, we sort of flagged it as a place that merits a look, but at this point we haven't developed an alternative set of design alternatives. So I can tell you, yeah, we're thinking of shifting the station from here to there. But that's something we are considering.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Well, hopefully I have more to come on that as we go forward. Okay, speaking of going forward, I'll try to hit the last area of our discussion. So these are some of the alignment and station refinement areas: Shady Grove, Montgomery College, Rockville, and Lake Forest. I'll try to get through all this fairly quickly and leave at least a couple minutes for open discussion at the very end of the meeting tonight. So Shady Grove is, it's the highest ridership station within the 355 BRT system. And, in large measure, that is the commuter connection, from the north feeding into the Metro Rail station. Obviously, there's a lot of transit that converges at Shady Grove, and it's an important regional community connection and mobility connection for the county. We're looking really as kind of the big picture. How can we make that connection with so many people we use as convenient as possible, and in particular trying to improve upon the proposed BRT station location that's on Somerville Drive. I'll show a map in a moment if you're not familiar with the area. And the other thing we have to consider, is Shady Grove is not located right on 355. It's just a little bit off to the east, and if every time a bus diverts off 355 to go to Shady Grove and then has to get back, that's something that is potentially not advantageous for passengers who just want to go straight north-south and go past Shady Grove as fast as possible. So, we also have to consider the fact that not everybody's trying to go to Shady Grove, but, we need to pass through the area. So how can we help them as well? So I'm going to show a series of slides that will roughly look like this on an aerial for the three different places I'll talk about. So on the Shady Grove view, what you can see in this case here in the lower left corner of the slide, the gold line represents roughly the alignment of the proposed BRT as it's coming out of planning phase 2. The bluish box here, you can see this one's on Somerville Drive, is the current proposed location for the BRT station. And in this case here, you can see, I'll try to do it on the map here. If you can see my cursor, you can see kind of the head house of the Metro Rail station here. We've also identified a couple of alternative station locations, and these are indicated by these white dashed rectangles here. So I'll just sort of take these in order. The one that probably seems the obvious one to most folks is what's labeled here as Shady Grove West. This would put the BRT station somewhere closer to the existing bus drop-offs and Kiss and Ride, near the WMATA station, actually in the WMATA property and kind of right at the front door of the station. The good thing about that is obviously it's very, very convenient for folks going into and out of the Shady Grove station, but, you know, it would require taking this gold line and, you know, really extending it even further off of 355 at the cost of a few minutes of travel. However, in the new proposed service plan, we have our gold route that actually terminates at Shady Grove. So this would actually be the end line stop for the service pattern on the gold line going to points north. So it could work out really well. We're also looking at the east side. So there's some broader visions for redevelopment of the bus loop and the parking garages on the east side of Shady Grove. Some of that's tied to the I-270 Express project. So, you know, the alternative here would be to come off 355 much further to the north, come around the Shady Grove access road and access this bus loop, and then make our way back to 355. It's quite a bit longer, doesn't actually perform too bad, but, has some other complications just given what the changes that would need to be made in Shady Grove. And then lastly, I'll point to this box in the very lower left corner. It's labeled south of Metro Station Access Road. This might seem like the least appealing option given our goal of trying to get people close to the Shady Grove station. But the current thinking is that in the future, we're going to have two lines passing through this area. Again, we've got that gold line that's coming from the north, terminating at Shady Grove. We also have the Navy line that's serving trips in the middle of the alignment from the Lake Forest area down to the south towards Grosvenor and White Flint area. So our thinking is currently that, there might be some advantage to having a BRT pattern that actually doesn't go to Shady Grove at all, but actually continues straight on 355 and provides a much more direct and quicker trip for those who are just traveling from north to south within the middle of the corridor. And then the gold route would serve the front door of Shady Grove and really be oriented towards getting commuters to the front door of the station in the most convenient way possible. So, that's some of the current thinking. We're working through details of that. We're looking at some of the practicalities of stations locations and talking to WMATA about the potential alternatives on their property to see if those look like they'd be feasible options. But it would try to provide us with an option that's a little less of a compromise than the Somerville Drive location that came out of phase 2. Dave, I see your hand.
Regarding the south alternative for the station, I don't know how good this analogy is, but the first thing I thought of is what Metro did at Dulles Airport. They chose to put their Metro station pretty far from the actual terminal, where people go to catch their planes. I think that's going to be a real big problem. It just doesn't make sense. Now in this case, as you point out, some of the people riding the BRT are not going to want to get off at Shady Grove, but for those that do, putting it in that south location as opposed to the one that you've labeled Shady Grove West, it seems to me that's going to discourage people from using both the BRT and Metro. It doesn't make the transfer easy. I think you ought to make the transfer as easy as possible. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Good comments. And, again, going back to kind of some of the service planning principles for this corridor, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of different reasons people would use the 355 system. And, we have different routes that can accommodate some of those different needs. So, if you're waiting somewhere, maybe just north, let's say you're by the college maybe, and you're waiting for a southbound bus, if there's one coming in 2 minutes, it's going to Shady Grove and it takes you to the front door, and there's another one coming in a couple minutes later that doesn't and gives you a quicker trip south, you might pick which one of those routes you choose to get on based on your ultimate destination. So that's kind of part of the vision is to just recognize not everybody wants to be taken to every destination, every stop along the alignment, and can we find ways to fine tune and reduce the amount of overall delay for passengers. You'll see a little more of this as we talk about some of the other areas, and I'll just kind of move forward into those just to make sure I get things done on time. So the second of the three areas is for around Montgomery College Rockville, and obviously this is another important connection. What's important for education, access to education within the county, and we're really looking to make as good of a connection as we can for the BRT to the college. As I mentioned at the start of my presentation, this is also where we've got the Veers Mill BRT terminating. So there are actually buses coming here. It's the last stop on the line. They need a place to park, lay over, turn around, get back into service, and head back to the south. So that's happening while 355 buses are coming through. And we also have some 355 service patterns proposed to terminate. So there's just a lot of bus activity, including a lot of kind of end of line bus activity happening around the college. The existing primary stop for transit at Montgomery College Rockville is in what's called the South Campus Drive area. And there's a picture here in the lower corner, kind of just to the kind of south of the lower right side of this rectangle of trees is a current set of bus loops for boarding, and sometimes the buses lay over if they have to stop and wait to enter service. Out on Manakee Street, just kind of parked on the side of the road. Kind of works okay for what's there today, but it's not clear that that's going to be able to support the levels of vehicles and passengers that will be serving the college with BRT in the future. So we have to look carefully at whether we can just expand there. Okay, so here again is the map with the same rectangles and lines. So the gold line here is showing the proposed phase 2 proposal for 355 BRT service in this area. As you can see, it's basically going straight up 355 in this area, along the eastern edge of the campus. It's right up against the Metro Rail tracks, where you've got a kind of a narrow, I think, 4-foot sidewalk and a fence in the tracks. So the proposed station location is what's labeled here south of Manakee, really on 355, a fairly long walk into the center of the campus. We're looking at a couple of other locations as potential alternatives. So here labeled as that South Campus Drive bus loop. And again, it's got some capacity constraint concerns we're looking into. Also, it's itself a fairly long distance off of 355. So in every bus that has to divert off of 355, make a turn, go to the campus bus loop, go back down Manakee, get back on 355, continue on its way, is introducing a lot of delay for passengers who just want to go straight north and south, including all those people, who just might be riding the blue line in the future, and also like to be passing Shady Grove and just getting a quick trip. So we're aware that not everybody wants to be at the front door of the college, but for college passengers, it could be fairly nice. So another alternative we're looking at is called Lot 13. It's labeled here in the lower right-hand corner. It is a parking lot that's owned by the county school district, but is currently leased by Montgomery College for parking purposes. This provides the potential, we think, for a good transit hub, maybe serving BRT as well as other local routes accessing the college, and could potentially be connected to the main campus through a high quality and safe, well-lit pedestrian connection across Manakee Street into the north of the campus. So a lot to figure out there still, but that one looks fairly promising. We've also looked on the northern stretch of 355, so essentially places north of Manakee Street up to about what's called the North Campus Drive connection here. Much of it is very difficult for a couple of reasons. It's a narrow roadway there that's constrained by the Metro Rail tracks. It's also a very high-speed area, and there's some private development, these apartment complexes between the roadway and the campus itself. So maybe the very far north corner could be a possibility, but this area itself has a lot of constraints. So we're still evaluating options here. Lot 13 looks really intriguing, but there's a lot to be figured out in terms of the feasibility of that site and the engineering of that site. But those are things we're looking at right now. And we've been in communications with the college system and talking about some of these alternatives, and we'll be bringing forward more technical analysis as we make our way towards the summer. Okay, so I'll go to Lake Forest Mall last. So again, here, here's a case of lots envisioned in terms of the potential future fate of the mall process. And the city of Gaithersburg has been going through a master planning process for what this area could look like, potentially more of a mixed use, residential, retail, office type of environment with possibly a new grid of local streets laid on top of the current mall location. This is also an area where we have a large diversion in the routing of the BRT that's coming out of phase 2, and we're looking for strategies to straighten this out. Also, the Lake Forest Transit Center is, of course, located adjacent to the mall, and this is a really important connection for City of Gaithersburg and adjacent areas for local routes, and we want to make sure that however things end up, we have good local bus connections to and from the BRT with local routes, and also some of the services that are currently serving transit customers, grocery stores, retail opportunities, employment opportunities, et cetera, in this area. So taking that all into consideration, I'll go to my last map, and here you can see on the gold line, it's a fairly circuitous routing going to the north. What we're having happen here is we're going basically around Odenhall to Lost Knife on the far side of the mall. We're passing by the existing Lake Forest Transit Center, as shown here with the blue polygon, which has the BRT station, but also park and ride and the transit center at that location. But then, coming all the way around to Christopher and back on 355 adds quite a bit of time and is quite inconvenient for folks who are just trying to go north and south, say towards the Clarksburg area or from the Clarksburg area. So we've identified some other locations that we're studying further. First one I'll talk about, it's called the Russell Avenue frontage. It's this shape that is have along Russell Avenue in close proximity to some of the ponds, if you're familiar with that area. What might happen here is we could relocate in the long term the transit center at Lake Forest that is located on the far side of the property towards somewhere along this frontage, and then have the BRT use Russell Avenue, basically go from Lake Forest Boulevard to Russell Avenue and then back to Christopher, back to 355. What's good about that kind of an option is it's a lot straighter. It's significantly less of a diversion, but it also allows us to keep the transit center intact and close to the BRT without having to divert all the way to the existing transit center. And then another good thing about it is it avoids the Maryland 124 or 355 intersection, which is quite a problematic traffic hotspot and will be quite difficult for us to get through reliably with BRT service. So using the Russell Avenue routing is a bit better from that perspective. And we've got some other BRT locations for stations shown here. So Lake Forest Boulevard potentially could have the station pair located there, or this location that's called south of Lake Forest on 355. So, a number of options we're working through here in terms of what's the best place to locate a BRT station, keeping in mind the, many moving parts in this area with long-term redevelopment of the mall, transit center connections, and the local engineering conditions of the streets. There will probably also be, not shown on the map, but, at least one or two other BRT stations within the footprint of this map. So, probably further down towards Russell and Christopher, or closer to the 355 and Christopher area, serving some other existing developments in this area, as well as a couple of redevelopment and infill parcels that are of great interest to the city of Gaithersburg. So all in all, really important alignment area. Also has, kind of ripple effects in terms of the transit connections at the transit center for other ride-on services in this vicinity. So we're trying to be strategic about how we can anticipate both the existing conditions as well as the future potential for Lake Forest as it is expected to evolve. Okay, I see Dave's hand, and I'll just also say this is kind of the end of my formal presentation, so I'll take Dave's question, and then if any time remaining, we can open it up to discussion, and Denny will tell us about the next steps.
Thank you. Real quick. So I heard you talked with the city of Gaithersburg about whether you can widen the roadway enough to make sure that the BRT is running in dedicated lanes. And then I look at this diagram as to where the mall station is going to be located, the BRT station. And you said that one of the considerations is making it easy for local buses to transfer to the BRT, which means the transit center located with the BRT station, which seems to me makes sense not only for BRT, but makes enormous sense for the city of Gaithersburg. So I'm just wondering if you can't negotiate both of these items at once with the city of Gaithersburg, and maybe you give them a nice offer on the relocation of the transit, of their transit center with the BRT station on Russell Avenue, which sounds like the best location. And in turn, so you'll do that wonderful thing for them, and in turn, they will do the wonderful thing of allowing the widening of the roadway so you can run BRT in dedicated lanes. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Yeah, certainly lots to talk about in Gaithersburg. Of course, the other moving part is the current landowners of the mall and their vision for this site. And then, there's possibly some shorter term, longer term options in this area as well. Could some of these improvements in this area be phased, and might other alternatives emerge in the long term with the redevelopment of the mall in terms of transit center location or routing through the proposed new development. So we're trying to keep all of it in mind and come up with what we think will be the most advantageous option for the project. Okay, I see Richard's hand.
Yep, just a quickie, and this is one of the things you're talking about, traffic signals and so forth, and it's really a problem. And this is for Corey with his, talk to his friends in engineering. Montgomery County has among the worst traffic phasing concepts I've ever seen, because it's all fixed cycles and stuff and things like that in many places. But they don't consider bus rapid transit at all. Now, like right on Exeter, the big thing I'm aware of now, not for a year actually, of course, is Medical Center Station. When that was running in full force, that was the terminal point for the right on Exeter, the 101 plus the local buses, and they have the signals very short coming out of the NIH property. So there's practically no traffic on Rockville Pike when I get there, which is sort of in the sixes range, but it could take 2 cycles, in one case 3 cycles, to get out of the space, just because of, depending on what Walter Reed does with turning traffic or this or that, and they just leave empty time on Rockville Pike when it could be used by buses coming out, and that's just not in the way they configured it, which is to keep Rockville Pike moving even though there's no traffic and a backup of buses. So when you talk about these things, and the actual software assumes rational signal phasing, but don't believe the models are, that particular element of the models will get translated to what the signal folks do, unless you really work hard at it and get rid of this whole fixed phasing concept and give it always to the area where there's traffic demand, not so much where you think it's appropriate because it's the through street when the through street is not full. So I leave it at that. So
okay, thank you, Richard. Okay, so we're almost at 8 o'clock, so I'll just turn it back over to Denny, who's going to walk us through next steps. So thanks everyone for your thoughtful questions and your time.
All right, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about next steps. You move forward a slide, Randy, and my cat has joined me. I'm trying to keep him quiet. I apologize. The world of Zoom meetings. He was howling at the door. So next steps, as I mentioned, we are working on 15% role plan development, which will be completed in the summer. And we are continuing our technical analysis of the BRT service plan, the running way, and refining the station locations in a little more detail. We are also beginning our coordination with FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, and beginning the development of a modified categorical exclusion or an environmental assessment in order to be in compliance with our NEPA environmental process. As I mentioned, we will have continued stakeholder and community outreach, including coming back to you all in the fall for CAC meetings once we have completed our role plans. And once we meet with you in the fall, we will then do the formal adoption of our locally preferred alternative. Next slide. So we also would like you to be in contact with us. Anytime you have questions or want some more information, our contact information is here on the slide. My email address and phone number, Corey's email address and phone number. I should mention that email is definitely the best way to get in contact with us. We'll get back to you more quickly because we are not still in the office. We are working remotely. Again, the project website is listed below, and Corey and I both did also send links to it in the chat. And we also sent some links to show the station locations as they are currently being considered. They might tweak a little bit as we go on through design, but they are in, you know, as they are shown right now, they're in a fairly set location. They might shift a bit as we move forward through design. So that being said, we are at 8:01, but we can take a few more questions if anybody has any more last questions. Oh, Richard, you have a question.
No. This is, you haven't taken my hand down.
Okay. Anybody else have any last questions?
Although I didn't realize, I missed the beginning, Denny, that you are now, have taken over Corey's job as head of the BRT 355 project manager, and just happy to meet you. So.
Oh, great. Yes. And Corey is managing all of the BRT projects. So he needed to pull in somebody for additional assistance.
Well,
so I'm helping.
Exciting new thing of sort of the Carter City Transitway Light project, if you will. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, maybe that will move someday. Maybe we'll get progress on that project someday. I worked on that project years and years and years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. We do appreciate, reaching out to the community. And as I said, especially the old Georgetown, Tuckerman, Rockville, that area, really important to our community. And we really appreciate you looking into it and working together with the Pike and Rose and the community as well. Thank you so much. We do appreciate it.
And Richard, I think you were talking about the Great Seneca Transit Network, which is moving forward. We believe we're going to have money in this budget to continue planning on that. So we're very excited about that.
This presentation, since I missed the front end, will be on the project website.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll be posting this as well as a recording of the whole meeting. So you'll see meeting minutes, the recording of the meeting, as well as the slide deck will go up probably, in a week or so.
Right. Okay, great.
Well, again, I want to extend, another thanks to everyone for taking a little bit of time out of your evening on such a nice evening, since we seem to be getting some warmer weather now. And we look forward to continuing to work with you all as this project moves forward.
Okay.
Thank you all so much.
And now we have a project cat. So
yes, can the cat come to the next meeting too?
Oh, you don't want the cat to come to the meeting. It's very, very loud. And he loves to get on my desk for every single Zoom call I have.
I love it though.
Thank you all. Thank you all for being accommodating, because otherwise he would have howled at the door and you would have heard it as well.
All right, everyone take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Bye.